Welcome to the Emotional Mastery Podcast. Today, I have Dee here, who is a professional opera singer turned transformational voice coach. And I think this is so fascinating and so beautiful because before I got into podcasting, I would never have thought about my voice. Like maybe kind of if I heard like a recording, I'd be like, ugh, like cringe at it, right? And then through podcasting, it's something that I've really taken more of a notice on, how I'm speaking, how I'm articulating, how I'm presenting. And so I was really drawn to what you do just based on my own reflection of my voice over the past 4 years or so. But I know there's so much to it that I haven't even thought of or scratched the surface. So I'm really excited to have this conversation. And I'll hand it over to you and for you to share your story and anything pivotal that got along the way that happened that sort of got you where you're at today, and we'll take it from there.
Fabulous. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
It's a bit of a long journey. I have been an opera singer for over 20 years and working in Australia, New Zealand, and on stages all over the world. I've been very, very fortunate. And as opera singers go, we are trained to be like the super athlete of the singing world. And it is an awareness of not just how the voice needs to project in spaces, but also the ability to really build up the strength, the resilience, the energetic. How do I put this I try not to use too many keywords because it is like you can go down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of terms that I'm noticing that obviously I know really fluently that others just don't. And that is something that I'm very conscious of bringing, to the conversation, because people go, what the hell's that? I don't understand. And that's okay. You don't have to understand. I need to translate it.
Mm-hmm.
And my job really is, as an opera singer, to really take everything that we've done, everything that we know how to do, because we are 0.1% of the population who decide that they're going to be opera singers. And so only a select few of those actually have careers. And then what do you do with it? Well, it is now very evident that what we do is needed now more than ever in this new era. And there are so many women, particularly my specialty is really working with women, because we are the voices that need elevation. We are the voices that need a platform. We are the voices that are ready to stand up and cut the shit, basically. Really bring down and restructure the systems and programming that has been going on for so long to now create some form of reconciliation and rebalance with everything, all the things that are happening in this world right now. And my job, I realized probably about 6 or 7 years ago that I had all this knowledge that would actually help a lot of people, because I didn't just see singing as just singing. We are trained to be these superhuman vocal producers in spaces of 2,000-3,000 seater houses with no microphones. And that is phenomenal to think about. We're trained to be these superhuman megaphones, basically. And I was curious to know how that kind of frequency, when I was geeking out in my uni years, how that kind of frequency impacts your spaces, impacts your audience, impacts you. And then I went down the rabbit hole, had the beginning of my awakening, I guess, in 2012. And it all started to unravel. And I was like, there's more to this. There's really powerful concepts and ideas behind this. The science has now proven everything that I've known for the best part of the last 20 odd years. And we're now at a place where there is a very intricate play or understanding of play between not just what we produce vocally as a biological function, but how frequency works to impact spaces and environments in a way that you can't fathom. And we still can't fathom the power of frequency in these states to elevate, to bring positive change, to speak up, speak out, and to really unleash a voice, which I talk about, the holy roar. The holy roar is really what women need to step up into because that's the voice that's going to get heard. That's the voice that's going to have impact. That's the voice that is far bigger, far scarier, far more resonant, far greater in sound than we possibly realize. And that resonance, that state of frequency is accessible to everyone, not just the small group of us who have been trained to do this. And the profundity, I guess, is that I see in people that I work with all the time. And it's not just singers. I work with speakers. I work with entrepreneurs now. I work with a real vast selection of people who have realized, this has been neglected. But it's also highly connected to everything else in our body, in our energy fields, in our environments. It's a frequency. It just happens to be, it's like an amplifier of your state. And when you consider the voices as that powerful, you kind of, people talk about the fact that, be careful what you say and be careful what you speak into the world. It's like, that's a whole other power. You rein it back in before you say something that you don't actually mean. And so, yeah, particularly since 2012, I've really gone down the rabbit hole of, I did Reiki. I loved that I was able to sense, and I have been able to my entire life, sense energies and hear misalignments. And my ears are stupid good at hearing when someone's bullshitting me. Mm-hmm. Because that's what we're trained to do from an operatic point of view, to hear the nuance and misalignments and glitches and things that aren't working, not just biologically, but energetically. Not just from a biological sense, but we're also inadvertently trained to pick these up with things like breath, with things like how would you call it? Intentional misalignments. And their energy formations. They are emotionally driven. They are brain thoughts that you then connect to. Yes, I've got to say something. That's an intention. That's often emotionally driven, particularly at the moment, without much filter. And all of that combined, I trained to be an intuitive. I'm a qualified intuitive coach. I did all of that knowing that there was something that I needed to do with this that wasn't singing on stages. And it was a much bigger idea and concept and purpose behind this that I am only just, and I'm not even 6 months into business for this particular brand and this particular path, but I know I'm here for a reason, and this is very much where I'm meant to be, knowing that most people are on socials talking, on podcasts talking, on YouTube talking. All of it is vocal content. And the voices aren't there energetically to support the work that these people are wishing to do, that women are now being called to do. So it's a very, very big sort of around the world kind of understanding and beginning, I guess. But it's profound, and it scares the absolute bejeebus out of me. But, we're here. We're having these conversations, and that for me is really, really important. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. First of all, I had no idea that opera singers didn't have a mic or anything. Like, I guess I'm trying to think. I've been to musicals and things like that, but I don't think I've necessarily gone to see opera. I've always been completely impressed by it, but that's absolutely incredible to be able to fill a theater like that with your voice. And something else that you said too, I think that, you can't fake energy, right? And to be able to notice the nuances, and even, I think it was in one of your reels on Instagram, but even, yeah, like the way that you're speaking, people pick up on it, whether they consciously realize it or not, and in human design, which will kind of scatter throughout this, but, in human design, it's everything, every center, every chakra is moving towards the throat, right? To be expressed out. So it's such a hugely important center aspect, energy, of all of our lives. And it's like everybody, I mean, not everybody, but most people speak, right? Most people have a voice and have a way to communicate. And I know, so I'm a Taurus sun in astrology. So Taurus rules the throat, right? And I've been in toxic relationships where I felt like I couldn't speak and it would literally hurt my throat. Like I would get sore throats, or I would just feel like every time there's something I want to say and I hold myself back, it just like sits here and I'm like, you can feel it so strongly.
You
So
can. It's like a plug that gets put in, energetic plug
yeah,
that gets put onto the energy center. It's so powerful. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So I guess then, to start, how do we work with that? Right? How do you um I mean, I love the place where like spirituality and science like clash, right? So even just like the science of energy, maybe we can start there. That to me is just so fascinating.
I am a 3000% woo-woo. You'd never know it to look at me. I am that hippie that wears suits. Like,
Yeah.
just, I'm, I am that person who adores everything woo-woo. Like
Mm.
I recently went to an all-women's festival here in Australia, and it is amazing for starters. But I was just like, oh, this is amazing. And then I go back and put my seat on. Like, you know, that whole, this is who I am, but also now we've got the science to back it up because my brain goes, that's fine. I understand that woo-woo-ness. How do we validate it in this science-driven world? And it has been for hundreds of thousands of years.
Hmm.
But we're only just airing a lot of this scientific research as being relevant and factual. A lot of it's been suppressed. A lot of it has been hidden. And it's now so nice to be able to go, oh, here's a whole heap of research. Merry Christmas. Like, that's the proof. Like, do
Yeah.
you need any more? And they're like, yeah, I still don't believe it. I'm like, our entire to give you the concept. So when we talk about frequency and from a woo-woo sense, it is not just how we are being in this world, as our energetic states in the world, how that interacts with the environment, how energy and frequency then molds your environments and yourself, how it heals, how it, what else? How it is metaphysically driven, how it impacts timelines, multi-dimensional connections, and so on and so forth, our higher selves, it is vast, the amount of information that we have on this now. From a boring science classical musician standpoint, we're built on what is called acoustic resonance. So we, as acoustic instrumentalists, without microphones and amplifiers and all that sort of stuff, if we take all of that away, the way that music was originally created, it was all built on acoustic resonance. And acoustic resonance in and of itself is working with frequencies of materials and environments to create a sound, which happens to be on a specific note, a certain hertz level. For those who aren't familiar, frequency is basically isolated to a certain hertz number, depending on the vibrations per second. So, for example, we all talk about this, the heart chakra, 432 hertz. It vibrates at 400, and now they believe the world vibrates at 432 hertz. Mm. That's 430 times per second to create that vibration. For example, if we look at a guitar or a stringed instrument, they're the easiest to look at because you can see the strings. Those strings are pulled to a certain level of tautness. For example, a guitar or a violin or a viola or a cello or whatever, it's a wooden casing that sits on top of, and the wooden casing then reacts to the vibration of that string to create the sound, to amplify that sound. Now, us as human beings, we have all this within us. No one knows necessarily how to access it to its most efficient state. So when we speak, when we go to communicate, we are basically vibrating at the level of appropriate vibration that is unlimited or unstuck or unhindered within our casing. So our body is our casing. Our head is bone. Underneath all this, it is built of these little resonating cavities all through us. Our throat, those two little muscles that sit literally in our throat to create the vibration are the strings. They don't create the volume of sound. The resonators do. And that is in our head, that is in our chest, that is in whichever bone cavities we can access, as many of those that we can access at the one time to create the most efficient sound, so that resonance can, at its full capacity, can exist in order to then be affected or affecting the environment. So when we speak, we put that out into the environment, and depending on which type of room you are in, whether it's outside, inside, the person in front of us, they are a resonating cavity that will respond. Depending on where we are, we hear a type of resonance. So for example, if you go into a cathedral, easiest way to describe it is go into a cathedral, clap your hands, and it goes. And in most cathedrals, there's about a 7-second delay. So you'll clap it at one end, 7 seconds, you'll hear it at a different end of the cathedral, and you're like, oh yeah. That kind of delay, that kind of impact for 7 seconds means it's traveling.
Mm-hmm.
When we sing or speak, we're aiming to maximize that resonance. So if you're sending it for 7 seconds, imagine speaking and then being the most horrible person you can possibly be and saying horrible words. Imagine that going for 7 seconds. And then imagine, saying loving things. And, it's why churches, this is my feeling on it, why churches why cathedrals are of God and built in that particular way, because the resonance of love is being carried for over 7 seconds for their congregations. And the seats are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But that's in us that creates it. Now, if there are limitations and blockages to that resonator access, which can be in the connections between your throat chakra and your sacral chakra, because in women, they're directly connected. The cervix, which is where your sacral chakra lives, and your throat look and act in exactly the same way. So you speak, and your cervix will respond. For example, if you were to orgasm, your throat acts in the same way. So if your cervix opens, this opens. If this closes and shuts down, so does your cervix. They respond in exactly the same way. That's science.
That's fascinating.
And then we go, oh, that's an energy center too. And it connects the two. So if you've got trauma and limitations in that center energetically, this is going to be affected.
Mm-hmm.
But more to that, if you've got safety issues that then affect the sacral chakra, and it's your ability to create, because we are creative beings, that creative resonance starts and exists in our life force, which lives within our sacral chakra. If we've got a solar plexus that doesn't trust, combine those three together, and they're all below our heart. Combine those three together, and they're not functioning, there's no way our throat's going to function, because the energy is not traveling up.
Mm-hmm.
And the throat's trying to send stuff down. And it's like, nope, we're out of here. So there's no reciprocal relationship, energetic relationship. That's a blockage. And you can see it biologically, let alone hearing it or witnessing the energy response. If you aren't breathing, if your entire bottom half of you is cut off, your breath won't drop. So these are basic things that we go, I know where you're cut off purely by how you breathe. I know that your bottom 3 centers are blocked off because the resonance in your throat is stuck to here. And it is. Most of us think it's just this little spot, where it's not. If you're not feeling those true resonations down in the chest, if you can't access a whole octave lower, because women have that access. We have this access of these really low, deep states that are just like personal resonances that actually activate our vagus nerve. But they're far lower than people think. If you don't have that access, your half of you's cut off. I know that you are. And then you've got to start digging it all out and start accessing it. It means releasing muscles and uplifting the energy that's in the bottom half of the body that's been cut off for so long. And once that starts to happen, the resonance increases. You have to do far less to get far more sound. You can just be in your space, talk for days. You've got far greater resilience. And again, it comes back to that. If you're speaking, just because you have a voice doesn't mean you know how to use it. I know certain percentages of men, but just because they have one doesn't mean they know how to use it. Mm-hmm. It works the same way. Just because you have a voice doesn't mean you're using it to its greatest power. And this is the part that where the entire female collective is being asked to stand up into and sit up into. Get rid of the junk, make it a channel that is unhindered, completely unhindered. And it means not just biological, it's energetic, it's frequential, it's mind, body, soul, spirit. Because if they're not aligned, you've got a hose with a hell of a lot of kinks in it. And everyone knows as soon as you kink the hose, the water doesn't flow. That is the energy flow. That is the column of energy that you have access to frequentially to then share with the world. But if you've got those kinks in the hose, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's being limited.
I love this. Do we each have like a set frequency aside from the words that we're saying, right? Because I think the words have power in their own, but do we each have like a set frequency that that is like native to us? Yes. And sort of like piling on that, would you experience my frequency different than like somebody else?
Yes, absolutely. So the way that let's start with way that you would respond to different frequencies. So yes, firstly, everyone has their own innate frequency built on your biology. No two people in this world will sound the same. Every single person has access to frequencies, to vibrational resonances because of your biology and your innate vibration, your personal vibration, because everyone's vibrations are a little different. That's what makes us special. Your inbuilt frequency and these inbuilt frequencies within you are not designed to sound like anyone else. And yet we spend half our lives trying to sound like other people. Mm-hmm. No, you need to like leave everyone else to do theirs and you do you. And this idea of you do you is more than just you do you, boo. Like it's so much more than that, because you are not built physically. Let's start with physical and biological concepts. You are not built like everyone else. Your head is built and shaped completely different to everyone else's. Your sinus cavities are built differently to everyone else's. How everything sits is built completely different to everyone else's. And we, the human being race, the human being entity on this planet, is the only entity on this planet that will not sound like everyone else. It is why we have energetic signatures to identify people now. Because you actually can't replicate someone else's vocal frequency.
So animals,
and that is pretty
sorry,
exactly the same.
So animals have this would sound the same. So if you got a group of them, you wouldn't be able to necessarily. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's the only because because there's so much differentiation between, it would have to take a lot of significant difference for them to actually sound different. Mm-hmm. Ours is so subtle, so subtle. It's why, when you go traveling, you can hear people that you know really easily. Like you go, I know who that is. Mm-hmm. If you go traveling and like we're Australian, you can hear that a mile off because it has a signature and then that person has a signature. You just have to yell at Aussie, 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 and then you hear it everywhere. Oh, it's so shameful. Anyway. So yeah, there's that. And then on top of that, your second question was, I forgot, sorry.
The first one was, do we each, well, I think you answered it. Do we each have like our own native, I guess, energetic like frequency or print and then, would everyone experience us differently? So would you, would someone else like would absorb that differently? And then would it, I'm trying to figure out how to word this next question. So I know that there are different frequencies that have higher, lower vibrations. would all of ours, just as being humans, be set at some sort of frequency of love, or does that change based on our intention, our genetics, or
Intention's a big part of it. Emotional, our because everyone's experiences growing up are completely different. From what I understand and what I see and hear is that yes, yeah, it will.
mm-hmm.
Now, it can resonate in alignment with, because I believe that we have access to all of these frequencies, but our innate frequency, I believe, is uniquely driven to create what we have here. So it will be slightly different. And the other thing, talking about sound and frequency, and this is something that I've worked a lot with, particularly in the first probably 15 years of doing this, was with singers. And now I work with entrepreneurs and women wanting to develop their voices that aren't singers, but there is a innate frequential link to certain archetypes. So certain archetypes have their own energy that are inbuilt into your vocal frequency. And fighting that then adds another block. But what I tend to see is that once you align the frequency that is attached to that archetype, the archetypal frequency, it tends to unravel a lot because it's almost like a permission slip. And then that archetype doesn't tend to change. In women, it sometimes does, particularly through childbirth, because everything changes. Like it's like a recalibration. That can sometimes happen, but most of the time it'll be the same throughout life. And then it works with other archetypes to then carry your energy, you know, in whatever stage of life you're in. But this archetypal energy doesn't tend to change. And fighting that archetypal energy is what I see a lot of, particularly, like I hear a lot of, particularly women who have a naturally high resonance sparkle, innate sparkle to their voice. So that would be linked to something like the enchantress, which is a mystical kind of sound. Now, every single archetype in the operatic world is attached to a certain voice type. And that's how I go, oh, okay, you're that voice type. Oh, yep, you're that archetype. And that's piece all that together and you get, you know, someone's voice. But you hear it, it's a natural sparkle that happens in the voice. And there's so many of those enchantress-based beings who are like, oh my gosh, I used to connect with fairies. And oh my gosh, I used to be like, I'm like, yes, that's you though. You're meant to be that. Stop fighting it. And they're like, but I've been told that I'm not serious enough. So they try and lower the voice down and grind it into something that a placement that's they're not built to place the voice into, because their biology, their energetic biology, it's not built for them. So they literally cut off. It's like cutting off a limb. Like they literally cut themselves off in order to fit into this. I'm like, dude, you're not meant to be that. Go off with the fairies. Like that's your superpower. Like, off you go. I hear it a lot in the maiden as well. So the maiden archetype is very much full of play, and like, no, I'm not allowed to play. No, I must be like, no, go play. Because it gives the voice freedom to then extend. So upper partials and lower partials to create what is called formant. Now, every frequency, this is where it gets into more of the scientific stuff, but every frequency, like you'll see a frequency line like this. And on the old stereos, you used to be able to see the green and the red. It used to go like this. That's formant. So when a frequency is extended both upper and lower in its partial, it'll blow out the frequency little channel. You can see, and then that frequency is where you're maximizing the frequential potential of that frequency. When you access the potential of it, you then have access to what is called overtones and simultaneous frequency access. So overtones are literally other notes that you hear within that same note. And that's the potential of the voice in its own inbuilt. Is you talk about when we talk about going, and I talk about this going quantum, when you want to access not just this plane, but other planes, you're in overtone land. If your voice is not functioning to be able to peak, maximize the peaks and troughs of your frequential access, your inbuilt frequential access, if you can't do that, you have no access to the potential, the quantum potential that the voice actually has. Mm. This is one of the reasons, and one of a big reason why, and in my experience, when people go to operas, they are changed. I've never been to an opera before. I didn't think this was going to be this. Is because they're accessing not just the notes that are being sung, but the frequential access of multiple notes simultaneously, even just from one voice. Multiply that by an entire chorus of singers who are all doing the same thing, and imagine the impact. Mm-hmm. So that kind of access is massive, and we have access to that just by speaking.
Yeah.
On a much less scale. We don't all need to be going out singing opera, but we have that access, and that's the superpower. That's what everyone needs right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if I'm understanding correctly, so that superpower really comes from not resisting that archetype that's within you, is when you're kind of leaning into that.
Yep.
So then when people are working with you, that's something you identify is their archetype, and teach them how to like lean into that more.
The first thing. It is always the first thing, because it often tends to be that, like I said before, the permission slip for then everything else to unravel. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, okay, this is what your voice's superpowers are. Oh, I didn't think that was a thing. Or this is where your voice is trying to overcompensate because you're not letting your voice just sit in its natural energy state. And, when you've got for example, mother archetypes who are on the lower end of the scale, but who aren't designed to be loud, are designed to be just resonant. It's like this you hear them and they go, it's just this inner knowing that they speak, and it's not overly loud, but it's just grounded. Mm-hmm. It doesn't go overly high, doesn't go overly low. It's just wide. And it's just beautiful. And it's not necessarily very cutting. It doesn't have a lot of upper partial. You can train the voice to access more of those upper partials if you wish. But the natural ability of the actual voice itself is to sit in this just really warm, resonant, free, loving space. Everyone, you meet them and you go, oh my gosh, you're just like, I just feel like it's a massive warm hug every time you talk. And that's the female version of the lover version, which is the male version, which is like you talk and your voice sounds like chocolate. Like that's the female version.
Yeah.
Ours is very nurturing. Theirs is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first thing I do, because it just, permission slip given.
Yeah. And this is even like, regardless of using the voice for singing, this is just basically like being authentic within like the way that you're communicating. It's interesting. I've been in the service industry, and when a server or a bartender or anyone, you can tell when they're being fake. Right. It's almost like there's one that specifically is coming to mind, but when she would speak to me normally, her voice was normal. And as soon as she like moved to a customer, she's like, hi, how are you? And I'm like, it would like go through me, because I'm like, it was just so inauthentic to who I knew her to be, but yes. It's really interesting how, and I do think that people pick up on that, whether you're aware of it or
very
not.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
More than ever. Mm-hmm. People don't do, and I hate the word authenticity. Can I just say?
Yeah.
Hate it. It is like, if I could just cut it out of the English language, it'd be really good right now, because it's been overused and no one knows what it means.
Yeah.
And so I talk more about alignment. I talk about being transparent and aligned. And for me, we're talking a little bit earlier about human design, and my gene keys, two of my gene keys that are interrelated are about intimacy and transparency. And I know that the more intimate that we become with ourselves, the more transparent that not just your communication becomes, but every part of you becomes. Your communication, however, is the summation of whatever your state of being is. You cannot disconnect it. But you
Mhm.
can. People don't believe you.
Yeah. I had to pull up your chart real quick because
Go,
I'm
go.
always curious. You're talking about one of them, I'm assuming, is gate 59, right? It's 59.6 is the
Mm,
channel you're speaking to. And that gate 59 is in your unconscious Mars, which is your biggest core wound. And it's also your vocation. So when you're leaning into that and you're healing that and you're using that, then it becomes a thing that you're here in the world to do. I think that's so beautiful. And you have, like you said, your throat is connected to your sacral. So it's like those are so interconnected for you, and having that completely clear and to be able to like project that is so beautiful to what you do, right? And this is why I'm just such a nerd on like human design and astrology, because it's in there, when I speak to people or I'll have sessions and there's just this like aha moment a lot of times.
mm,
And you talk about, like you said, alignment or authenticity or whatever terminology you want to use for it. I think
mm.
that to me, it just means coming back to who we already know that we are, but we either resisted, we've forgotten about. And I think this, what you do, even with the voice, is so important to that because, like I said, I think we don't realize how much energetically comes across, whether it's through our voice or some other means. Like we're always communicating with each other, just energetically, even,
That's it.
and to be able to notice that. And I can tell when I'm in an interview or when I'm, doing a live or a reel or like whatever it is, when I start noticing when I just can tell when I'm out of sync with myself or when I'm trying to push something that's not there. And I just have to like take that pause, But of course,
Yeah.
the voice is the thing that we hear. Our words
Mm.
are the thing that we hear. And it's the way that
Yep.
that's coming across, right? Is so
Yep.
powerful.
That's it. That's exactly
Mhm.
it. You can't deny that the voice, and this is the thing, people have tried to disconnect the voice from the body for so long in that, oh, it just works. Oh, it's just a thing. Oh, it's just something I use. It's been, it's like the middle child. It's just kind of been like left to its devices.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is that the middle child has a lot of power. And once you start connecting it, once you start realizing that this is your greatest power because it is able to verbalize your energetic states, which include your thoughts and your
Mhm.
emotions and everything else that we try and shove down and pretend it doesn't exist. It is that it is a tool for that, but is also like it's our greatest gift in this world. And you can't ignore it. You can't, not anymore. When
Mhm.
people are talking, and you hear it on socials all the time, like I can't do socials at the best of times because I not like, and I hear it so much in our younger generations, particularly, where I hear vocal grinding, I hear in constant upward inflections, I'm hearing um, this what we call vocal fry, this sound that
Mhm.
everyone's like, that's a complete stop of airflow. If your air's not flowing, your life force isn't flowing.
Mhm.
And so I'm scrolling past girly after girly after girly who is vocal frying their way through their content. And I
Mhm.
can't listen to podcasts like that. I can't, it is a complete misalignment. And yet they think they're being authentic. I'm like, man, you got layers to go. Keep going. Like,
Yeah.
there's a whole other thing. And then on the flip side, there's people who I've seeing a lot of, oh my gosh, I've healed my throat chakra. Oh my gosh, I can now speak my truth. Yeah, but that truth is attached to old muscle memory and energetic stuckness that's attached not just here, because you're still speaking like you did before. You just happen to be able to speak up. They are not the same thing. They're two completely different things. You have to get rid of the residual energy and muscle memory in order to then for the voice to be cradled by the rest of the body to then produce this bigger sound, this bigger energy state that you have stepped into and healed. It is. I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot, and it's a far more complex system that is connected to every part of yourself, not just your throat and your sacral. And, every single center works as one, not just separated. And if you're not working with all of them to heal the throat, then you're not, and then also working at the biology, because we are biology as well. You can't just go, oh, it's just energy. It's just energy. Yes, it is. And you are biology. You are all of these things combined. So if you're not working in all components, you're only doing half the job.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big, big thing I'm hearing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. I had a sound bath once, and this is, not voice, but just the energy of sound. And it, like, I swear it took me to another place, but it was amazing. All the bowls were put on different parts of my body and like moved. And it was just incredible how you feel that, like, in every part of your system. That wasn't coming out of me, but it was coming in me. But it's like the power of that tool and the power of sound. And I think that's why music is so universal, because there's been songs I don't know what they're saying, don't know the language or anything.
Yep.
And it's just, you can feel it, like classical music specifically. I mean, you can feel that music, right? As it's moving through you. It's like, you don't have to know what they're saying to feel what they're saying. I think it's so beautiful.
And any good singer would have had that intention.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's intention recorded, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not a lot of the more recent recordings, sadly. It is the older recordings that you really hear that intention that comes through. You hear the cracks in the voice, you hear this imperfection, because emotion is not perfect. It's perfectly emotive, but it's not perfect. It allows, when a voice is connected to emotion, you will hear it crack. You will hear it be imperfect. You will hear the resonance the singer works with to convey that emotion. And there's a fine line between feeling that emotion fully and feeling the emotion through that character, and having that one step back, because, either you take the step back or you're emoting and then you just lose yourself on stage. And then that's selfish. That's not serving the art form then.
Mm.
And the same thing goes for speaking. If you get on stage and you're speaking to your audience and you lose your shit on stage, and everyone goes, oh my gosh, that's just amazing. No, you've been fucking selfish, because you're bringing your trauma into a bigger space. You haven't dealt with it. If you can't remove yourself one back or go past the point and can now talk about it, then you're no better than the people in your audience who came here to get wisdom from you. Like, you are literally walking and sharing your trauma. That's not, people connect not through, we don't want a trauma bond. Trauma bonding is not what we're here for. Mm-hmm. We are here to share stories. We're here to connect people to story. We are not here to trauma bond. There's enough trauma in this damn world. We're here to heal it. Yeah. But you can't do that from a traumatic state. You can't do that when you're losing your shit on stage. It means there are parts that you haven't dealt with yet. Yeah. And then you're trauma bonding with your audience. And it's a whole world of performance stuff. It's like so relevant now. The speaking stage.
So as an artist, for you, say when you were an opera singer and you would come on, say if something in your life happened, you're doing the work to move through it enough that you can be emotional on stage, but not bring it to the stage.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. You bring that to your rehearsal space. You lose your shit in the rehearsal space. You stop rehearsals. You're like, I'm sorry, I just need 10 minutes. Obviously something's triggering me. You take it back to your practice room. You work through it. What is it that's triggering me? It's any journal, any diary, like the amount of journals I went through uni, like working through this character hits a little bit home. Like, I explored my entire masculine character, whole masculine energy through working through roles, because like I was playing 14-year-old boys on stage. Like, this is great. Like, I get to be a 14-year-old boy. I also get to do, I get to be my rebel on stage. But all the work that happened prior to it, and there were roles where I would absolutely lose my shit. Like, this is clearly hitting home. And those roles tend to be the hardest to let go at the end of a show, because there's been such an emotional work through that role. But at the end of the day, we are not serving the music or the character if we are bringing ourself onto stage, because they are not us. There are a lot of similarities probably and a lot of differences in some cases, but they are not us.
Yeah.
They're archetypes that we're working through, or there's energetic connections emotionally that you are designed to work through this character, but you bring that on stage and you are trauma bonding.
Mm-hmm.
Not just with your audience, but with your cast.
Yeah.
And they've got their own issues.
Yeah. So when you're working with clients, let's say, who aren't artists or who aren't musicians, and
yes,
we're just working with their stage, right? They're an entrepreneur or whatever the case is. Are we embodying an archetype in that setting? Is that sort of
only here?
Mm-hmm.
So here, yes. And then any archetypes, because I'm a big believer that archetypes are part of who and what we work through energetically in multiple points in our life. So you could be working with an archetype at any point. For example, if you are transitioning from, late 30s and early 40s, we're going through, mother archetype into heading into Crohn's state. You know what I mean? It's that these transitional energies that help you work through. If you're working with, as a speaker, if you're working as an entrepreneur with your own clients, if you're doing masterclasses and workshops and all this sort of stuff, all this training stuff that we are now required to do, plus content creation, all the hats, you will be working with archetypes, guaranteed. How they show up in your life will vary. You are working with this archetype to get the best out of your client, though, and speak the truth, aligned truth, from the power that is here, in alignment with everything else. So it's from a character point of view, there is a layer. You still need to be offering that layer, but it's not detaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's going, okay, this is what I can offer. This is where I'm at. And there will always be shit you're working through, always.
Yeah.
But you don't bring them into sessions.
Mm-hmm.
You don't bring them into your masterclasses. You don't bring it into, you certainly don't bring it into your speaking gigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you're not serving your client anymore. It's selfish. And we're not here to be selfish. We're here to serve.
Mm-hmm.
I say this a lot. I've been working with some senior kids because they've just been allocated their school captaincies and stuff like that, right? And there's one particular gentleman who has been known for being the back end of, organizing events at school and being the sound guy and the lighting guy and organizing everything in the background. And I came up to him this year, and after he got announced, I'm like, you do realize that that's not your role anymore. You have to let everyone else deal with that. You are now the leader stepping into the spotlight, knowing that you can do all that to serve the people in front of you. And I said, and if you're nervous doing that, you're not thinking about them, you're thinking about yourself. And when you are serving, if you're thinking about yourself, nothing lands to the audience. It doesn't travel.
Yeah.
So when we talk about frequency impact, this is how it impacts, through intention. So if your intention is to serve your audience, but you feel nervous as hell inside, you're not serving them anymore. Your intention's on you. Oh my God, I feel nervous. Oh my God, I can't do this. Oh my God. Self-talk, 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 energetic blockages. You've literally put the veil down in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
When you are connected to your audience and you are serving them for their needs, because at the end of the day, and most people don't realize this, they don't give a rat's butt about you.
Mm-hmm.
They are there for them.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing your job, which is to serve them, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just back at square one.
Mm-hmm. That's a reframe I've had to take on myself. I actually heard a couple weeks ago or something, but somebody had said when you're feeling fear, it's actually selfish, right? Because you're thinking about yourself and your body and like all those things. And I was like, I never really thought of it that way. But something that I've used to reframe anxiety that I felt is that instead of going in and being like, oh my gosh, yeah, like, what are they going to think about me? Am I going to deliver it right? And this, all these things, it's like, how can I serve the space that I'm walking into? Right. So it sort of takes some of the pressure off you because it's like, what can I give the space rather than being so consumed with like, oh my gosh, like I'm shaking or this, and are they going to notice? And I think we all have anxiety. We're humans. Nobody's perfect, right? And this idea that we have to be perfect for some reason, through society. And it's like, embrace the imperfection, because that's the beautiful part of us.
That's
But
exactly right. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
and it's a beautiful reframe. Beautiful
Yeah.
reframe. It is. It is that inbuilt fear system that is stopping you. And when I talk about keeping people small, I think of it as that frequency beyond the stage. So I always think about it, okay, if I'm serving, it doesn't matter whether it's stage, whether it's Zoom, whether it doesn't matter where you are.
Mm-hmm.
If the frequency is in fear, it doesn't carry in the same way that love does. It doesn't have that same power build up that love does, which is very much a feeling of service. And that's the part that the audience connects to. So you won't connect. If you're fearful and worried about connecting, you're not going to.
Mm-hmm.
Your job as a service entrepreneur, a spiritual entrepreneur, a coach, a speaker, a facilitator, whatever you are doing in this world, you choose to do in this world, your job is to go past the screen, past the front of the stage, past whatever the front rows of your audience in whatever capacity you are working with someone so that they feel it on the other end. So if you're in a room, for example, of 100 people, your energy has to serve all of the room to the back. And if you're using a microphone, for example, if we go back to the voice part, if you're using a microphone is a frequency enhancer, not a frequency creator.
Mm.
It is built for spaces bigger than the 100-seater room that you're currently in. We have gotten smaller, and therefore those microphones have come in to those spaces which probably never would have existed before. So the smaller the spaces get, like when you talk about teachers, when you talk about facilitators, and they're in a room of like 8 people, a boardroom, and they're using a microphone, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
No, that's lazy. That's actually lazy. You're not working with your energy. You're misaligned all over the place because you think that microphone is creating the sound. It's not. You create the sound that is then
Mm-hmm.
enhanced by the microphone.
Yeah.
The only reason why someone should use a microphone is if they're outside, like because there's very little frequency and resonance coming back. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. The
Yeah.
rest, but you still have to create the sound for that microphone to then pick up.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not functioning efficiently, there's no way that this thing is going to work
Yeah.
in the way that you want it to.
Yeah. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. That's funny. I've been using it with like 8 people.
Yeah, like
Yeah. Yeah.
BYO boombox.
Yeah.
Little like
For
very
those in the
80s.
back, can't hear me.
Yeah. Holla. Yeah.
So,
Why?
do you have any like maybe simple tools for people to sort of have that what reframe or just to begin healing? Because I know a lot of people that do listen to this, are aware of the power of frequency and things like that, but just in the healing power of even just singing or humming and like you said that vagal nerve activation. So for anyone that's like maybe just trying to strengthen their voice or strengthen the way they speak or be able to be more aligned or whatever term, like in whatever capacity and space that they're in, is like just any maybe simple tool or reframe.
Yeah. So there's a few things. Firstly, I'll take it into capacity, not just from how sound is created, because that understanding is really helpful, but I'll give very much the cliff notes. But also a space needs to be able to resonate, like the freedom of resonance needs to be supported. and they are two very different things. So space gets created when we access the breath into lower parts of our body. Space, we need to basically get all of the muscles out of the way and allow our body to breathe in a manner that is now no longer normal, but natural. So natural state of breathing is what we did when we were babies. The world hadn't hindered us yet, hadn't told us who we are, what we are, how we act. Suck your stomach in, you need to be thinner, stop talking out loud. None of that has happened yet. Everyone goes, oh my God, you're just, oh, bliss, beautiful, wonderful, magic. Yes, you are, and you still are. But we need to get back to that state. And that state is an unmuscular breathing pattern. Now, I talk about this because when the breath is limited, because we all know that our lungs are in our chest. However, the concept of the diaphragm has come in and hindered a lot of this, particularly in spiritual spaces. And we talk about diaphragmatic breathing. And the concept of diaphragmatic breathing has, like, I see so many people like, I need to breathe from my diaphragm. I'm like, no, you don't need to breathe from your diaphragm. You need to breathe past it, because the diaphragm literally cuts us in half. It sits us pretty much on the solar plexus. So when we focus and when we tend to hyper focus, it locks. And it locks when it shouldn't lock, because the whole purpose of the diaphragm is literally to help air draw into our lungs through gravity. We don't actually breathe in. We draw air in through gravity. And then the power is actually in the exhalation. You can control your breath out. You actually can't control your breath in. And that's the part where people's like brains pour out of their ears, because they're like, oh my God, I actively breathe in. No, actually you don't. Gravity draws air into you. It's like, when you've got a ball and you roll it up to try and get the air out, but the air in seems to be just so much easier to take in. When you pump it up, there's no real restriction. It just kind of fills. That's kind of what happens, is that it's the power, the rolling out to get the air out, that builds up the pressure to then allow the air to come back in. So what tends to happen is we go, okay, I want to breathe. We're going to breathe into my diaphragm. We'll do diaphragmatic breathing. And then the diaphragm becomes muscular, because we go, oh, I need to focus on my diaphragm. I need to control it. And control is the worst thing you can do for it. And we all love controlling stuff. However, the diaphragm doesn't function when it's controlled. It's like a trampoline that sits underneath your lungs. So as you breathe in, it drops down. As you breathe out, it rises up. If that is locked in place and that muscle does not want to drop down the way it's built to, your breath doesn't go past that muscle, because the lungs sit above it. And the only place it can go is up. So you shoulder breathe. And you go, and all of that breath then puts a lot of excess pressure onto all the muscles that sit in the throat. So when you hear people gasping for breath, that's pressure. That's muscular. Now, in order to release the diaphragm, you have to pretend it doesn't exist. And you are going to instead, and there's a couple of exercises that I give, but there's a really good one which I do for just basic awareness. And it is, we use a touch of our body, because our bodies are really hyper aware of touch. So when we touch ourselves, our brain goes, oh yeah, there's a hand on my thigh, or there's something on my foot. You know what I mean? Our brain connection to our body becomes really quick. That activation becomes really quick. So chest, start with just the middle of the chest, and you imagine that if you put a hand fully on your chest and you breathe in, imagining that your lungs are actually your hand. So we're isolating the airflow into that space. And the best way to do this is lying down, because there's no gravity to hold on to muscle. But this helps a great deal. Then we move that hand and we take it a little bit further and put it just below our diaphragm and into the pit of our stomach. And again, we're isolating the breath. So the breath is going to breathe into that hand, nowhere else. So he's really trying to isolate that. And it's really hard. It's very, very hard. And our brain goes, can't quite understand what's going on. That's it. And then we take the next step, which is actually our lower abdomen. So where our ovaries for women sit. Gentlemen, it's about about 4 inches below your navel. And you're going to put your hand on there and you're just going to breathe in there. So your lungs now are in your hand in that low space. And everyone goes, I can't do this. And I'm like, that's because your brain's involved. I'm thinking about it. Yes, you are.
Mhm.
So the last place we do it is we take both hands and we put them on the hips. So where the torso and the hip join, where the thigh joint, upper thigh joint, that space, if you just lie the base, the palm of the hand just below that, and you put both hands, and now your lungs are in your thighs, basically. So you're going to breathe into that space instead. And what you'll feel, particularly if you're lying down, there's much more access to it. But what should happen is there are muscles that sit just above into the torso, just on that hip joint, that actually release. And they're meant to release. But society has told us that we shouldn't ever release those because they're not meant to be released because we need to be skinnier and, whatever. Those muscles are meant to actually relax because they are also connected, because every muscle in our body is connected, frustratingly enough, into that whole space that sits not just in our lower torso, but around the back as well. And it becomes this central activation of muscle and release of muscles that have been holding on for an eternity. Now, once you've gone through the activation isolated, then I normally get someone to put hand on chest, hand on the lower abdomen again, and then just breathe as though the whole body is now lungs. And what should happen is those lower muscles. And you'll hear gurgles and all sorts of stuff that finally come into the body. They're meant to happen.
Yeah.
They're actually meant to gurgle. So if you're not gurgling, there's a lot of tension being held.
Yeah.
Because it should feel like bloop, bloop, and that's the stomach finally being released so the diaphragm can then be released and all the muscles that have been held up through that entire thing. So that's the first one. Just lying with that, allowing that breath to relax. The diaphragmatic, when we talk about diaphragmatic breathing, it's actually that the diaphragm is able to extend down. But if everything's locking at a place, it can't extend. So we've just got to imagine it's not there and go past it. All right. The second thing that is important is that once you've created the space, then start humming. Just nice, low, easy, like, And when I talk about women have this access, it's almost like it comes from a really low rumble state. That's meant to happen. That resonance is meant to happen. But what you'll feel is that it's all the way down into like the lower chest. You can almost feel it down your stomach. That's how resonance, when it's released, that resonance access it acts kind of like a whirlpool. It's like a cavity. It's like the cathedral. You've got space for sound to just resonate. Okay, there's nothing limiting it. It's just resonating. And then the third part is really the support of that, which is then we reactivate the muscle, the right muscles, to then support this. Now, the biggest thing with this is that if you're reactivating, it is the same muscles that we use when we cough, when we laugh, when we give birth. They are a much lower primal muscle that is internally active. It's not our six pack that sits on the outside. Everyone goes, oh, six pack. Yeah, no, imagine it's not there. We go to the side, and the easiest way to access this is if we grab our thumbs, we put our thumbs on to the side of our bodies, just below our rib cage and just above our hip bone. There's a little gap of about a couple of inches that's squishy or should be squishy. And if you shove your thumbs in, you're like, oh yeah, they're squishy. Now, if you just cough lightly, you'll feel them activate. And they're the muscles that we use to support. So they're on the inside out. They function internally outward, not outward in. And that internal outward is where the flexibility happens. So you can use the breath, be flexible with the breath, manage the stream of air of flow that goes through your breath, manage your volume, manage your sound resonance. Like that is the control you have when it's away from the part that's creating the sound. So there's multiple parts to it. But again, if you're resistant, if you're energetically stuck, if you're closed off, you won't get access to that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's quite a big process. But people who I have been working with, I had one particular lady who had a massive change in 4 days just from doing A, the archetype, B, this relaxation breath work. And because we hadn't gone into support yet, just breath work and just engaging resonance. 4 days. And like I've done this for 20 years. Like I was like, how? But it's profound. Like
Yeah.
when I'm seeing those kind of responses, I'm like, okay, I'm onto something here. There's something
Yeah.
going on and the world needs it.
Yeah. That's amazing. I couldn't like on the part underneath my hips. Well, I'm also like a little bit cold, so I'm like shivering. So I'm like noticing how tense my body is as I was like trying to
Yeah.
do this. But I was like, I just couldn't, my mind couldn't like breathe into that spot. It's like, how do
No.
I make this
And it's
work?
just when you cough, when you laugh, when you sneeze, all of those muscles, next time you do that,
Mm-hmm.
go, what just happened? Like,
Yeah.
something just moved. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's those internal muscles, that internal activation. That's the one we want to, because that's the one that gets out of the way. It's like a little person who lives inside of you who's just like,
Yeah.
get out. Yeah,
Yeah. I do have two more questions. Do you have time?
of course.
Okay. So this is just like a kind of a random one, but as we were like kind of going through that, I thought about it. Would like abdominal surgeries impact like the way you speak or communicate or the energy or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. From a biological sense alone, yes, absolutely. Particularly like because I know there's a lot of mothers who go in and have, for example, their the reconstructive surgery over the abdomen, like
Mm-hmm.
where it separates.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, absolutely. But your body's biology, and this is the most wonderful thing about it, is that it doesn't matter how your body has the ability to heal itself and to regenerate and to
Mm-hmm.
build up and to relax. And it has this ability to do it. Yes, it can take time. Yes, it can take some focused work and some intention, but absolutely, not even a question. There are people who have complete and utter vocal meltdowns who have had surgeries, not just from, not just abdomen, we're talking, vocal surgeries, nodules, all sorts of stuff have come from literally the depths of, oh my God, I have no voice, to then having their voice reconstructed through slow, intentional work. Because our bodies are bloody smart,
Mm-hmm.
smarter than our brain.
Yeah.
Way
Yeah.
smarter than our brain. And we have to kind of get our heads around that. Yes, not even a question. Not even a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
You have the ability to heal and to regenerate and to recondition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then my last question is, of course, emotions related, but how do we use this work to maybe heal our emotions and, or how does that come through? Sort of tying into a little bit, I guess, of what we were talking about before is when we're communicating and not bringing that fully through, but how can we, in the reverse, use it to heal?
Yeah. So anger is a big one. Anger is a really, really big one that often gets stored, particularly with women. So if we're going to talk emotions, let's go all out.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, Anger when it's connected, and this is why, for example, when babies cry forever, they don't lose their voices.
Mm-hmm.
When the voice is truly connected to the emotion, we have a resilience like nothing on earth. When it's connected to the emotion, truly connected to the emotion, it's a fantastic way to get it out. So when you talk about screaming into pillows, for example, which is a great way, a lot of actors are taught how to scream, how to cry, not cry, but cry out
Mm-hmm.
um, in a way that is deeply connected so they don't damage their voice. It is a great way to process if it's done to its truest connection. So if you're half-assing it, it's not connected fully.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being really, that awareness being in response to it, that helps process the emotion, being this unfiltered space in our when we're working through stuff, when we're, journaling it out and going through the emotions and noticing, okay, oh, I've got a trigger to something. What is that emotion that's coming up? And how do I best process it or get it out so that it is not then being imposed on other people in an unhealthy way? And for me, like, again, as long as it's connected directly to the emotion, it is a fantastic fuel to release. And for a lot of women, I know anger is a big one right now. A lot of stored anger that needs to come out. There are a lot of facilitators for that kind of work. That's not my specialty, but identifying it, absolutely. But working through it, there are people who are far more talented in this than I am and far more expert in this than I am, that can help you release the emotion from a somatic point of view that is vocally connected. But it has to be vocally connected in I'm talking anchored in. I'm talking like all fingernails, rooted down into the emotion that is then releasing all of the emotion from that truth place. When we talk about transparency and alignment, it must be connected if the voice is able to be used to heal it. Now, from a vagus nerve point of view, particularly if you're feeling unsafe to vocalize, using low humming is a really great way. It's very personal, but it's a great way to self-soothe. Because the vagus nerve is directly connected into the throat area, the access to the vibration is quite easy. But it's a great, particularly working through trauma, if you're unable to speak, if you literally feel like you feel gagged every time you talk and you don't feel safe enough to speak up, or you feel like you're constantly just silencing yourself, working with the vagus nerve is a really great way to resonate safety because of where it connects. And you just do it I sit on the bus all the time. Mm-hmm. I do it in the car all the time. I am literally I poke my tongue out to make sure that there's no tongue root being pulled back and blocking the space, but tongue out. And I'm going to, if this gets recorded and people see the visual, I'm so sorry, but poke your tongue out as far as it'll go, close your teeth down on it and just hum. And it actually releases a whole different energy. So, and that just low resonance, it activates so low that a lot of the vagus nerve is being stimulated, not just from the place it's being vibrated from, but all the way down.
Interesting. Yeah, I do the humming. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do the humming a lot, like in the car, or if I'm feeling anxious or something, I'm just like, I'll just sort of but I haven't stuck my tongue out. I'll have to try that one next time. Just do that one.
Tongue root is a good one, only because the tongue is most people don't know this, but the tongue is actually the strongest muscle in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the ability to cause havoc on vocal function. It's why if you've got tongue root, so you can literally shove your thumbs and fingers up so where your jaw sits, you can feel the whole way down. And you can massage it right just into the jawline. And all of that is directly connected to the tongue. Now, that's the thing. That's the next step. It's like if you reach up, poke your tongue out as far as it'll go, all of these muscles get tighter again. And people go, like that's exactly right. It has a gag. It's all attached to our gag reflexes. It's all attached to everything. So getting the tongue out is actually really important because our tongue, is our safety mechanism when we yawn. So it stops particles going down our esophagus. Our food pipe. It has a really prominent function, but when you speak and wanting to access resonance, it gets in the way. So we need to be aware that is a thing because it's all not just attached to here, it's all up in the jaw, it's all up in the back. It is so full on. If you get migraines and headaches, really great one to release to help release that energy state to then get start getting rid of the muscle tension that's in that jaw, in that tongue root. And it helps a great deal.
That's interesting. I know there's been times before where I've been nervous and I just feel like my tongue is like 3 sizes too big, like
Yep.
tripping over my
That's
words. I'm
it.
like, I can't do
That's
it.
it's gone like this. So all the muscles gone
Yeah.
like this, and
Huh.
it literally fattens up the back of your tongue.
It's just because I'm
Um,
anxious and I'm tense and
that's
it's
it.
just flattening
Yep.
out. That's
Yep.
fascinating.
It pulls back and
Fascinating.
it flattens, going, oh my God, I need to be prepared.
Huh.
And that is literally what it does. It literally just kind of pulls back on it. It's kind of, yeah, it's weird. Oh, it's serpent
Yeah.
thing. I don't know. Yeah,
Interesting.
it's full on, but and nervous energy is the hardest way to manage these states if you're not getting yourself into nervous states and then actually figuring out, because it's a whole kettle of tools in and of itself to develop states in which all of these natural things that normally would happen are not starting to happen. You've got tools and tricks to help settle it down. A big one, and most people don't know this, is that nervous energy, when these kind of states sort of kick in, you can actually release it quite easily if you just go for a run around the theater or,
Mm.
jump up and down or exert the energy somehow. And
Hmm.
because there's nowhere for the energy to go other than to run.
Yeah.
And that's our fight and flight. So
Yeah.
run, skip,
Hmm.
jump up, star jumps, do something to exert yourself to just release. Like it's like taking the kettle, letting the kettle air go, the steam
Hmm.
go when the kettle's boiling. Like that's otherwise it explodes. Like
Yeah.
either you release the tap or you become almost unfunctionable
Hmm.
and unfunctioning.
Yeah.
So it's got to be released somehow. Really great way to do it.
Yeah. Well, I love like, so Mars is your expression of your emotions, right?
Yeah.
And, for you, your emotions are connected to your sacral, it's connected to your throat. And like that 59 isn't, it's just beautiful how it's like literally your emotions are coming through your throat. And that's what you're, supporting people with. I think it's amazing. It's beautiful.
If you can't express your emotions, and I think like this has been my life's work
Mm.
coming from a family, and I adore my family, but my God, emotions were not a thing.
Yeah.
And I was highly emotional. I'm like, why is this
Hmm.
not a thing? Like, all legs
Me
it.
too. Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
is that not a thing? This is my life's work. And then I get on stage and I'm like, because then no one can tell me to shut up. Like
Yeah. I
I
love
can
that.
do this and no one
Yeah.
tells me to shut up. And then I'm like, oh, hang on a second. Yeah, there's a gap here that I can feel. So
Hmm.
yes,
Yeah, for me,
unfiltered.
so in human design, my solar plexus is connected to my throat. And I think that's part
Mm,
of a huge why I do this podcast, right? Because it's like
yes.
talking about emotions, supporting with emotions, bringing
Mm,
people and different tools to help people with that part of their life
yeah.
because it's emotional mastery, is what the podcast is called, but it's so much more than that. It's all holistic
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
all connected and
Yeah.
it's incredible. So, yeah. But
This is amazing. And I'm
yeah,
loving the work you're doing. This is so great.
thank you. I know I could talk to you for so long. This has been so
Yeah.
fascinating. But if there's anything that you feel like you want to share with the listeners, or any last words, and definitely let them know how they can connect with you.
Sure. Last words. This is lifelong work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a one and done. Doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's lifelong work. And if you're in it, you're in for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
There is, you talk about energy as your medicine. This work is my medicine. It has been my medicine. It still is my medicine. And it's a lifelong adventure, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lifelong journey to know that the voice has this potential. And yeah, I'm here for the long haul.
Yeah.
Stick it out and see what happens, eh? So
Yeah. It's
yeah,
incredible.
know that it's a lifelong thing. Don't think it's a one and done,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes the pressure off everything, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Right. It
and
does.
there's enough pressure. We don't need it with our voices as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there
Um,
anything that you're working on that you want people to know about, or definitely let them know how to
yeah,
connect?
yeah. It's been a pretty big month. January's been pretty big already.
It has.
I am in the process. I'm literally on pre-launch for my Release Your Raw program, which will launch on the 1st of February. It is currently on special offer pre-sale prices. And there are two distinct programs for different pricing levels, depending on where you're at, what you want to do, how quickly you want to move. There's the signature program, which is, the one-on-one program with me. And then there's also a membership and community, which is a year-long monthly membership, which gives people access to all the stuff just without me, which I wanted to make this as accessible as possible for everyone, no matter what your needs are. And no matter what your price point is, because this work is needed big time. So that is on pre-launch. If you're wanting to access that, you can go to msdrogers.com, and there's a tab under Work with Me that has all that information. Please reach out if there's anything you would like to know further at hello@msdrogers.com. And yeah, I am so grateful for this time we've had. It's been so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Me too. And thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing and for sharing it with everyone.
Well, it's been bliss. Thanks, Janelle.
Thank you.